I can still hear the crack when his fist broke Dr. Patel's orbital bone. It sounded exactly like a branch snapping in the woods behind my parents' house in Marietta on a cold December night when I was 10. One second, the woods are quiet. The next, there's this sharp, wet pop that you know can't ever be undone. That sound happened at 05:23 a.m. on Christmas morning, 2024, in the surgical ICU of Grady Memorial Hospital, Atlanta. And I was standing 6 feet away, still holding the warm ambu bag in my hands from the code we'd just called. My name is Ashley Reynolds, BSN, RN, CCRN. People online usually just call me Ash. I'm 31, 5'3" on a tall day, red-haired that refuses to stay in a bun, and I've been an ICU nurse for 8 straight years. 6 of them on nights because the differential pays the rent on the tiny one-bedroom I share with my cat, Kevin. I work in the 24-bed SICU at Grady, Level 1 trauma center, gunshot wounds, liver transplants, ECMO, the whole circus. If you've ever seen a TikTok about the real ER, where the floor those patients graduate to when they're too sick to leave. Christmas Eve 2024 was already one of those shifts that you know is going to bruise your soul long before it's over. We were on diversion for trauma because every bed in the city was full. Flu, RSV, COVID, and a nasty norovirus were ripping through Georgia like wildfire. Add the usual holiday drunk drivers sliding on black ice up I-75, and the place smelled like blood, vomit, pine-scented Clorox, and the cheap chocolate some rep left at the nurse's station. I had just come back from a 2-minute bathroom break. Miracle! When the charge phone rang. At 1942, massive upper GI bleed, 76-year-old female, BP 58/30, already intubated by EMS, ETA 4 minutes. We cleared the resuscitation bay like we'd rehearsed it 1,000 times, because we had. Crash cart, Blakemore tray, 2 units of uncross-matched O-neg already hanging, MTP cooler on wheels. That's when Mrs. Gloria Jackson rolled through the double doors. Eyes rolled back, blood pouring out of her mouth around the endotracheal tube like someone had turned on a dark red faucet. Her son Marcus was right behind the stretcher, still wearing his high-vis trucking jacket, knuckles white on the rail, screaming, "Mama, I'm here! I drove all night! I'm here!" I didn't know it then, but the next 11 days would empty every drop of fight we had in that unit. And on the morning of December 25th, when we finally lost her after 52 minutes of CPR, Marcus would put Dr. Sarah Patel, my favorite attending, the one who brings homemade samosas when we're short-staffed, in the trauma bay with a face that looked like she'd been in a bar fight. And then, 38 minutes later, he would drop to his knees in the hallway, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe, begging us to forgive him. This is the story I've never told anyone outside the break room, because how do you explain to your mom or your civilian friends that the same man who broke your doctor's face also shattered your heart into 1,000 pieces with one sentence? I just wanted my mama for Christmas. If you work healthcare in America right now, you already know nights like this exist. If you don't, buckle up, because this is the shift that made me question whether I still have anything left to give, and somehow, against every ounce of logic, made me fall back in love with why I ever became a nurse in the first place.
Part 2. The Patient and the Family. Her name was Mrs. Gloria Jackson, but every single nurse on the floor started calling her Miss G within the first 12 hours. She had that effect on people. 76 years old, 5'0", maybe 90 pounds soaking wet by the time we got her. Chart said retired middle school English teacher, Atlanta Public Schools, 38 years. The kind of teacher who kept a jar of Jolly Ranchers on her desk and could quote Maya Angelou from memory even when her ammonia level was 180 and she was seeing snakes crawling on the ceiling. She rolled into our resuscitation bay at 1946 on December 14th, 2024. EMS had tubed her in the ambulance because she was actively exsanguinating. The medic was still bagging her when they hit the doors. Blood was coming up the ETT so fast, it looked like someone had hooked a faucet to her lungs. I remember the paramedic yelling, "We dropped 218 gauges in the AC, 4 units O-neg on the pump. She's on the massive transfusion protocol already." Her initial labs would later come back looking like a death sentence written in numbers. HGB 4.2, platelets 28, INR 4.8, fibrogen less than 60, lactate 18, pH 6.91, base deficit -22, serum creatinine 4.1, up from 0.9 2 months ago. MELD score 40. Child Pew C. For anyone who doesn't speak liver failure, that's the medical equivalent of we're standing on the edge of the cliff and the ground is already crumbling. We found out later she had non-alcoholic steatohepatitis cirrhosis. Never touched a drop of alcohol in her life. Just years of diabetes, hypertension, and the slow, invisible violence of the standard American diet. Her esophageal varices had been banded twice before, but the last GI doc had written, "Patient declined further endoscopy due to anxiety." That note would haunt us. Marcus, her only child, was 44, long-haul trucker out of Dallas. He'd been on the road when his wife LaToya called him at 3 a.m. to say Miss G was vomiting blood like a horror movie. He told us he made the 850-mile drive in just under 22 hours, no sleep, 2 Red Bulls, and a prayer every mile. He walked into the PACU still wearing his reflective Carhartt jacket, steel-toe boots caked in road salt, and eyes that looked like someone had punched him in the soul long before he ever threw a real punch. The first time I met him was when I stepped out of the room to update family. He was pacing the waiting area clutching a plastic Walmart bag with his mom's Christmas presents inside. A red cardigan, a new Bible with her name embossed in gold, and a little tin of homemade peach cobbler LaToya had packed because hospital food ain't fit for nobody. "Ma'am," he said, voice cracking, "tell me true. Is my mama gonna make it to Christmas?" I wanted to lie. God help me, I wanted to give him the soft version we're all trained to deliver. But something in his eyes, the same warm brown as Miss Cheese, stopped me. I told him the truth we tell families when we're too tired for sugarcoating. "Marcus, she is very, very sick. We are doing everything humanly possible. But she has lost a tremendous amount of blood and her liver is failing. We're gonna fight like hell, but I need you to prepare yourself that she may not leave this hospital." He just nodded once, slow, like a man receiving a death sentence he already suspected. Then he whispered, "She raised me alone after my daddy died in Desert Storm. She's all I got." For the next 11 days, Marcus basically lived in that waiting room chair. He showered in the family lounge using the little travel kit the social worker gave him. He ate the cafeteria's dried-out turkey and gravy because it was free for ICU families. Every morning at 6:45, he would stand outside the glass doors and wave at his mom through the window, holding up handwritten signs. "Morning, Mama, I love you. Jesus got you, I promise. Keep fighting, we still gotta open presents." Inside the room, Miss G was intubated, sedated on propofol and fentanyl drips, Blackmore tube down her throat ballooned to 300 cc to tamponade the bleeding varices. We were dumping blood products into her faster than most humans have in their entire body. By day 5, the massive transfusion tally looked insane. 42 units packed red cells, 38 units FFP, 10 units platelets, 6 units cryo, 2 units prothrombin complex concentrate, and multiple doses of recombinant factor 7A off-label because we were desperate. She was on triple pressors, norepi, aso, and we even started Giapreza at one point. That's the $2,000 a vial pressor most hospitals keep locked up like it's plutonium. Continuous dialysis because her kidneys shut down. Daily bronchoscopies because she kept bleeding into her lungs. We tried to get her stable enough for TIPS radiology, but her platelets never stayed above 20 long enough. Every morning on rounds, Dr. Patel would look at the numbers, look at Miss G's swollen belly full of ascites and blood, look at Marcus standing at the glass, and say the same thing. We are doing everything, but we are buying hours, not days. And every morning, Marcus would nod, kiss the glass, and say, "Thank you for not giving up on my mama." He never once raised his voice during those 11 days. He brought us cookies his wife baked. He asked every nurse's name and used it. He cried quietly in the consult room when the chaplain prayed with him. He told me once, voice raw, "My mama always said nurses are angels walking on earth in Crocs." I believed him. We all did. We were fighting for Miss G because she was worth fighting for, and because Marcus loved her in a way that made you remember why you signed up for this job in the first place. By day 10, her skin was the color of wet paper. Her abdomen was tense and shiny from third spacing 25 liters of fluid. You could smell the liver failure. That sweet, sickly, late-stage cirrhosis smell no amount of peppermint oil under your mask can hide. On Christmas Eve, Dr. Patel pulled me aside after rounds. "Ash," he said, "if she makes it to midnight, I will be shocked. I've never seen anyone this sick survive this long. We need to prepare him." That night, Marcus brought his 2 kids to the window for the first time. 9-year-old Aliyah pressed her little hand to the glass while Miss G, miraculously awake for 30 minutes off sedation, managed the tiniest smile around the tubes. She lifted one finger, just one, and touched the glass back. I cried in the medroom. Half the night shift did. We had no idea that in less than 8 hours, the man who did nothing but gentle and grateful would put Dr. Patel in the same trauma bay his mother had arrived in with a face that looked like it had been through a windshield. Sometimes love isn't soft. Sometimes love is a fist looking for something to break when the universe has already taken everything that matters. And sometimes the person it breaks is the one who tried hardest to keep your world from shattering in the first place.
Part 3. The moment everything exploded. Christmas morning, 04:17 a.m. The SICU was quiet in the way only ICUs get right before all hell breaks loose, like the air itself is holding its breath. Miss G had been circling the drain for 36 straight hours. Her pressure would come up to 80 systolic on 4 pressors, then crash back into the 50s the second we tried to wean anything. Lactate had climbed to 21. She was cold to the touch, mottled from knees to chest. Her pupils were 6 millimeters and sluggish, even under the propofol drip. We all knew. At 04:11, the arterial line flatlined. Not the gentle downtrend you sometimes see, just bam, flat. Simultaneously, the ET tube filled with fresh red blood. The ventilator started high pressure alarming because her lungs were full again. Shit, she's blowing another Varix. I hit the code button before Dr. Patel even opened her mouth. We rolled her bed away from the wall like we'd practiced 1,000 times. Charge nurse Jen grabbed the crash cart. RT swapped to manual bagging. I took over compressions because I'm short and the bed height was already perfect for me. Dr. Patel called it calm and clear. PEA 0412. Push 1 of epi. Continue CPR. We ran the ACLS algorithm like it was written on our eyelids. Epi every 4 minutes. Calcium because she was hyperkalemic from all the blood products. Bicarb because her pH was probably 6.8 by now. 8 rounds total. 52 minutes of chest compressions. I remember looking up at the clock at one point and seeing 04:58. My shoulders were on fire. Someone had taken over compressions twice, but I went back in because I needed to be the one doing something. Anything that felt like keeping her here. At 05:04, we got ROSC. Sinus tach at 138, narrow complex. Blood pressure 74/40 on maxed pressors. Dr. Patel let us cheer for exactly 3 seconds before the monitor flatlined again. Fresh blood poured out of the tube like someone had pulled the plug in a bathtub. 05:09 a.m. Dr. Patel looked around the room. Every face was gray. She called it. Time of death, 05:09. Thank you, everyone. I'll go talk to the family. We stood there in that postcode silence that always feels holy and horrible at the same time. Someone turned off the ventilator alarms. The only sound was the soft hiss of the propofol syringe pump, still pushing 50 mics per kg per minute into a woman who didn't need it anymore. Dr. Patel peeled off her gloves, washed her hands like she was scrubbing for surgery, and walked out to the quiet room where Marcus had been waiting since 3 a.m. I stayed behind to start cleaning up. I was bagging the lines, pulling the forest of IV tubing out of Miss G's arms, when I heard the scream. Not a normal scream, a sound I have never heard come out of a human being before or since. Like every ounce of pain in the universe had been crammed into one man's throat and detonated. Then came the crash. I ran. By the time I reached the family consult hallway, it was already happening. Marcus had Dr. Patel pinned against the wall outside the quiet room. His right hand was cocked back. I saw the punch land in slow motion, knuckles connecting with her left cheekbone or orbit with a sickening crack that echoed off the cinder block like a gunshot. Dr. Patel's head snapped sideways. Her glasses flew off and shattered against the floor. Blood sprayed from a laceration that opened instantly above her eyebrow. Marcus wasn't done. He roared, actually roared, "Why couldn't you save my mama?" and hit her again, this time a body shot to the ribs that lifted Dr. Patel clear off her feet and slammed her into the wall. She crumpled. I've never moved so fast in my life. I threw myself between them, shoulder-checked him as hard as I could. He was 6'3" and probably 260 pounds. I'm 5'3" and 125 on a day I've eaten too many cookies. It was like hitting a brick wall, but it surprised him enough to stop the third punch. Charge nurse Jen tackled him from the side. Security officer Rodriguez, big Samoan guy who usually jokes with us, came barreling around the corner and wrapped him up in a bear hug from behind. Marcus fought like a wild animal. He was screaming, snot and tears and spit flying. "Let me go! She killed my mama! They killed her! She was fine yesterday!" He elbowed Sam in the face, splitting his lip. It took 4 of us, plus Sam, to get him down. I ended up kneeling on his right arm while Jen held the left. He was sobbing so hard his whole body shook under us, repeating over and over, "I just wanted her for Christmas. I just wanted my mama." Dr. Patel was on the floor 10 feet away, curled on her side, blood pouring from her face onto the tile. Her left eye was already swelling shut. She was conscious but dazed, trying to push herself up on one elbow, murmuring, "It's okay, it's okay." It wasn't okay. The overhead page went out, "Code gray, SICU, code gray."
Within 30 seconds, the hallway filled with people, hospital police, the nursing supervisor, the chaplain, half the night shift. Someone put Marcus in flex cuffs. He stopped fighting the moment the plastic clicked. Just went completely limp, face down on the floor, crying like a little boy who dropped his ice cream. I crawled over to Dr. Patel. Her left cheek was deformed, obvious orbital blowout fracture. Blood was streaming from a 4-centimeter laceration over the eyebrow and another on her lower lip. She looked up at me with her good eye and whispered, "Don't let them hurt him. He's hurting worse than I am." I lost it right there. Started sobbing so hard I couldn't see. Security lifted Marcus to his feet. His face was destroyed by grief, swollen, red, wet. He wasn't the same man who'd brought us cookies 3 days ago. He looked hollowed out. As they started walking him toward the elevators to take him to APD custody, he suddenly twisted, dropped to his knees hard enough that I heard the tile crack under the impact, and lunged towards Dr. Patel. We all flinched, thinking he was going for her again. Instead, he threw himself flat on the floor in front of her and wrapped his arms around her legs like a child and wailed, "I'm sorry, Doc. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't mean it. I just wanted my mama. I'm so sorry." Dr. Patel, face already turning purple, blood dripping onto her white coat, reached down with a shaking hand and laid it on his head. "I know, Marcus. I know. I forgive you." The hallway went dead silent, except for the sound of a grown man absolutely shattering. I looked around, and every single person, cops, nurses, techs, was crying. Even Officer Rodriguez had tears running down his cheeks. That was the moment the cameras in the ceiling recorded what would later go viral inside Grady. Never outside, thank God. A 260-pound truck driver, on his knees, cuffed, forehead pressed to the shoes of the doctor whose face he had just broken, begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve. And the doctor, tiny, bleeding, barely able to stand, giving it anyway.
Part 4. Immediate aftermath. The fluorescent lights in the hallway felt too bright all of a sudden, like someone had cranked them up to interrogation level. Blood was everywhere. Dr. Patel's on the wall in a perfect handprint-sized smear, more on the floor, a few drops on my clogs that I didn't notice until hours later. The smell, iron and terror, hung in the air like smoke. Security had Marcus back on his feet. The flex cuffs were cutting into his wrists. You could see the skin turning white, then purple. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was swaying, vacant, repeating the same 3 words on a loop. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Officer Rodriguez and APD Sergeant Brooks started walking him toward the staff elevators that go straight down to the patrol hold on the ground floor. I heard Rodriguez's voice crack when he said, "Easy, big man, we got you." Even the cop was shaken. Dr. Patel tried to stand up on her own and almost folded. Her left knee buckled. Later, we found out the body shot to her ribs had bruised 2 of them. I caught her under one arm, Jen took the other. Her face was already grotesque. The left side swollen to twice its size, eye completely shut, blood still pouring from the eyebrow lac. She looked at me, half her face collapsing, and said the most Sarah thing possible. "Ash, I need ice in a mirror. I have to be back for sign out at 7. I laughed. I don't know why, a hysterical bark that turned into a sob. "Sarah, you're going to the trauma bay right now. You're the patient." She started to protest, then the adrenaline dump hit her and her legs gave out completely. We lowered her to the floor. Someone grabbed a backboard, ironic as hell, and we slid it under her like she was any other trauma. I rode down in the elevator with her. Same elevator Marcus had just been taken down in handcuffs 2 minutes earlier. There was still a smear of his tears on the rail. We rolled her into Trauma Bay 1, the exact same bay Miss G had coded in 11 days ago. The irony was thick, you could choke on it. The trauma team lost their minds when they realized it was Dr. Patel on the gurney. "Sarah, what the hell?" Then they saw her face and went dead professional. CT stat, face, Orbits, C-spine, labs, lac repair kit. I stood there in my blood-spattered scrubs while the attending who usually runs the show became the one getting the cervical collar. Diagnosis came back fast. Left orbital blowout fracture, floor and medial wall. Zygomatic arch fracture. 4 centimeter stellate laceration eyebrow, 2 centimeter lip. Grade 2 concussion, 2 left rib contusions. No intracranial bleed, thank God. They took her to the OR at 0610 for repair under sedation. Plastics came in on Christmas morning because that's the kind of human Sarah is to all of us. Meanwhile, upstairs, the SICU was a crime scene. Yellow tape across the hallway, photographers, administration in suits at 5:45 a.m., risk management, the whole circus. And Marcus was downstairs in holding, facing felony aggravated assault on a healthcare worker, up to 20 years in Georgia if they push it. I couldn't breathe. I walked to the chapel on the first floor because I didn't know where else to go. It was empty, except for a janitor mopping. I sat in the back pew and ugly cried until my ribs hurt. I kept seeing Sarah's swollen face and Marcus on his knees and Miss G's cold hand I'd held 20 minutes earlier. At 0648, my phone buzzed. Text from the chaplain, Reverend Denise. Marcus is asking if he can see Dr. Patel before they transport him to Fulton County. He won't stop crying. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. I didn't know what forgiveness was supposed to look like at 6:48 a.m. on Christmas after someone you love has just been beaten half to death by someone else you love in a completely different way. But I knew Sarah. I walked down to the APD hold room. Marcus was on a metal bench, cuffed to the wall, head hanging so low his chin rested on his chest. When he saw me, he started shaking. "Miss Ashley, please tell her I ain't no monster. I never hit a woman in my life. When she said my mama was gone, something in me broke." I crouched so we were eye level. "Marcus, she's in surgery right now because of what you did. She can't see you." His face crumpled. A sound came out of him that wasn't human. Then he whispered, "Can you tell her I'm sorry, please?" I told him I would. I was halfway to the door when he called out, voice small, "Tell her my mama would be ashamed of me right now. Miss G always said violence is what you do when you run out of words." I couldn't answer. I just nodded and left before I started crying again. Sarah came out of the OR at 0920, left side of her face wrapped in pressure dressing, eye patched, lip stitched, looking like she'd been in a cage fight. The first thing she asked when she saw me wasn't about her face. "How is he?" I lost it all over again. She reached for my hand with her IV arm and squeezed. "Ash, bring him to me before they take him." Administration tried to stop it. Legal said absolutely not. But Sarah Patel is 5'2" of pure steel wrapped in kindness. And when she said, "Either you bring that boy to my bedside or I'll discharge AMA and find him myself," they caved. At 10:05 a.m. on Christmas morning, Marcus, still cuffed, escorted by 2 officers and Reverend Denise, was brought to PACU Bay 3. Sarah was propped up on the stretcher, face swollen beyond recognition, morphine on board but still lucid. Marcus took one look at her and collapsed. The officers caught him before he hit the floor. He was sobbing so hard he couldn't speak. Sarah reached out her hand. He stared at it like it was the last lifeline on earth. Then he took it, gently, so gently, with both his huge cuffed hands and pressed it to his forehead. "I'm sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry, Doc. I'm so sorry." Sarah's voice was hoarse from the tube they'd placed for sedation, but steady. "Marcus, look at me." He did. "I already forgave you the second you asked. Your mama raised you better than this, and you know it. But I know what grief does. I've held too many hands when the monitor went flat. I know." She paused, wincing as the swelling pulled at her stitches. "You didn't hurt me nearly as much as losing her hurt you. So we're even, you hear me? We're even." Marcus broke completely. A sound I hope I never hear again. Sarah turned to the officers.
Uncuff him, please." They hesitated. She gave them the look, the same one that makes residents cry on rounds, and they did it. Marcus rubbed his wrists, then did the only thing he could think to do. He knelt, again, by her bedside, laid his head on the rail, and cried until there was nothing left. Sarah put her hand on his bald head and let him. Reverend Denise prayed over both of them. I stood in the doorway with Jen and 3 security officers, all of us crying like idiots. When they finally took Marcus away, charges reduced to simple battery, released on signature bond because Sarah refused to press felony charges, he stopped in front of me. He reached into his pocket with shaking hands and pulled out the little gold-embossed Bible he'd bought for his mama. He pressed it into my hands. Tell her my mama would have wanted her to have it, for being Jesus to me when I was the devil." Then he walked out into Christmas morning in handcuffs and a broken heart.
Part 5. The knee drop moment. People always ask me what the exact moment was that broke me open and put me back together at the same time. It wasn't the punch. It wasn't the crack of bone or the blood on the wall. It was 38 minutes after the violence in PACU Bay 3 on Christmas morning, when a 260-pound trucker knelt at the bedside of the doctor whose face he had just destroyed and begged for a forgiveness he was certain he didn't deserve, and she gave it to him without hesitation. That was the moment I understood what grace actually looks like in real life. Let me take you there. 10:05 a.m., Christmas Day, 2024. Post-anesthesia care unit, Grady Memorial Hospital. The overhead lights in PACU were dimmed for the holiday. Little strings of multicolored Christmas lights the night shift had taped up weeks ago, still blinking lazily around the nurses' station. Sarah was in Bay 3, propped up at 30 degrees, face a swollen purple mess under the pressure dressing. Her left eye was completely shut, lip stitched and shiny with dermabond, a perfect imprint of knuckles blooming across her cheekbone. She had refused any more than 2 milligrams of morphine because I need to be awake for this. Marcus was escorted in by 2 APD officers, Rev Denise walking beside him like a quiet shepherd. He was still wearing the same high-vis jacket he'd had on for the last 11 days, now wrinkled and stained with tears, blood, and Grady Hospital floor grime. His wrists were raw and red from the flex cuffs they'd removed 10 minutes earlier. When he saw Sarah, his knees buckled so hard the officers had to catch him under the arms. He couldn't speak, just made this broken, keening sound, like a wounded animal that finally understands it's been caught. Sarah reached out her right hand, the one without the IV, and let it hang in the air between them. Marcus stared at it like it was a miracle. Then he dropped. Not dramatically for effect. He simply folded, every ounce of fight draining out of him at once. His knees hit the tile with a dull thud that I felt in my chest. He crawled the last 2 feet to her bedside on his hands and knees, head bowed, shoulders shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deeper than lungs. He wrapped both of his huge, trembling hands around her one small brown one and pressed it to his forehead like he was praying to it in church. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice shredded. "I'm so sorry, Doc. I ain't never raised my hand to nobody in my life. I swear on my mama's grave, when you said she was gone, it felt like the world ended and I needed something to hit so it would stop spinning. I picked wrong. I picked you. I'm so sorry." Sarah let him cry for a long minute. Then she did the thing that still makes me tear up every time I tell this story. She threaded her fingers through his and squeezed. "Marcus," she said, soft but firm, the same voice she uses when she tells a resident they missed attention pneumo. "Look at me." He lifted his head. His face was destroyed, eyes swollen almost shut from crying, snot and tears mixing with the dried blood on his chin. He looked 10 years older than he had 11 days ago. "She had already forgiven you," she said. "The second you asked in that hallway, I forgave you.
You didn't hurt me nearly as bad as losing her hurt you. I've held too many mothers while their sons stood outside the door and screamed. I know what grief can make you do. So, we're even. You hear me? We're even." Marcus made that sound again, the one that isn't human, and folded forward until his forehead rested on the rail of her stretcher. Sarah looked up at the officers. "Take those cuffs off him now." They hesitated. This was technically an assault on a healthcare worker. Paperwork was already filed. Sarah gave them the look, the one that has made chief residents cry at 3 a.m. over a missed lactate. The officers uncuffed him. The second the metal clicked open, Marcus did something I will never forget as long as I live. He gently, God, so gently, took Sarah's bruised hand, turned it palm up, and pressed his lips to the inside of her wrist, right over the pulse point, like he was kissing a saint's hand in church. "Thank you," he whispered against your skin. "Thank you for giving my mama 11 more days. Thank you for not giving up on her, and thank you for not giving up on me when I stopped being human for a minute." Sarah's good eye filled with tears. She reached out with her other hand and laid it on the back of his shaved head, fingers moving in the same small circles she uses when she comforts dying patients. "Your mama raised a good man," she said. "She'd be proud of you for this part right here." Marcus completely lost it. He stayed on his knees for a full 5 minutes, crying into the blanket on Sarah's stretcher while she stroked his head like he was one of her own kids. Rev Denise stood behind him with both hands on his shoulders, praying softly in a voice that could calm a hurricane. I stood in the doorway with Jen, both of us openly sobbing. One of the officers wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and pretended he wasn't. When Marcus finally stood up, his legs were shaking so badly he had to lean on Rev Denise. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small golden-bossed Bible, the one meant for Miss G, the one he'd shown me every day through the glass. He placed it in Sarah's hand and closed her fingers around it. "My mama would want you to have this," he said, "for being Jesus with skin when I needed it most." She clutched it to her chest like it was the most precious thing anyone had ever given her. Marcus turned to me last. "Miss Ashley," he said, voice raw, "you held my mama's hand when I couldn't. You let her squeeze your finger that last time she woke up. I ain't never gonna forget that." Then he hugged me. Not a polite hug, a full-body, rocking back and forth Southern mama at a funeral hug that lifted me off the ground. I could feel his heart hammering against my cheek. When he let go, he looked at all of us, Sarah, me, Jen, the officers, Rev Denise, and said the last thing any of us expected. "Y'all gave my mama the best death anybody could ask for. She wasn't alone, she wasn't in pain, she had people loving on her right up until the last second. I got mad at the wrong thing. I should have been thanking y'all instead of hurting y'all." He took one step back, dropped to his knees again, this time facing all of us, and bowed his head. "Thank you," he said to the floor. "Thank you for loving my mama when she couldn't love herself anymore." Then he let them lead him away. Sarah watched him go until the doors closed. Then she looked down at the Bible in her hands, opened it to the dedication page, and read the inscription Marcus had written in shaky handwriting the night before. "To Mama, Merry Christmas 2024. I'm finally home. Love ever, your boy Marcus." She traced the words with her finger, tears rolling down the one side of her face that still worked. I sat on the edge of her stretcher, and we cried together until the PACU nurse threatened us with discharge papers. That was the knee drop moment. Not the punch, not the blood, the moment a man who had every reason to hate us chose, while literally on his knees, to thank us for taking care of the person he loved most in the world. That was the moment I knew I would never leave this job. Not after 20 more years of nights like that, because sometimes in the middle of all the ugly, humanity shows up barefoot and bleeding and reminds you why you keep going.
Part 6, The Days After. The first week after Christmas 2024 was the quietest our PACU had ever been.
Nobody played music at the nurse's station. Nobody made TikToks. The usual dark humor that keeps us alive was gone. We moved like ghosts, restocking rooms, answering alarms, speaking only when we had to. Sarah was out for 6 weeks, orbital reconstruction surgery, rib fractures that made every breath hurt, and the kind of concussion that left her dizzy if she turned her head too fast. But the real injury wasn't on the CT scan. She told me on day 4, sitting in her kitchen while her husband made tea. "Ash, I keep seeing his face when he hit me, and then I keep seeing his face when he kissed my hand. I can't decide which one is real." She started therapy twice a week. So did I, so did Jen, so did Sam, the security officer. Grady set up a critical incident debrief for the entire night shift. Half the room cried, the other half stared at the floor. The hospital never pressed felony charges. Sarah refused to sign the affidavit. Legal lost their minds. The DA offered aggravated battery, still a felony. Sarah said no. She wrote a victim impact statement that basically said, "The real victim on Christmas morning was a son who watched his mother die. I was collateral damage of a broken heart. Please offer him counseling, not a prison cell." Marcus ended up with misdemeanor simple battery, anger management classes, 100 hours community service, and court-ordered grief counseling. He completed every single requirement early. He also sent things. First came the flowers, 3 dozen roses delivered to the PACU on December 31st with a card that just said, "I'm sorry," in handwriting so shaky it looked like a child wrote it. Then came the letter. 8 handwritten pages on yellow legal paper. He apologized to every single person by name. He'd memorized our name badges. He thanked us for every small thing we did for Miss G that he'd noticed. The way I braided her hair when it got tangled in the BiPAP straps. The way RT Mike sang old gospel hymns while he suctioned her. The way Sarah held her hand during the last bronch and whispered, "It's okay to let go if you're tired." He ended the letter with this: "I hate that my worst moment hurt y'all on your worst day. I pray God lets me spend the rest of my life making up for 5 seconds I can't take back." Then came the gift cards. $500 in Starbucks cards, split between the day and night shift. A note said, "For all the coffee that kept you awake while you kept my mama alive." The unit put them in the break room drawer, and nobody touched them for weeks. It felt like blood money. January was brutal. I started having nightmares, the crack of bone, the blood spray, Marcus's scream. I'd wake up swinging at shadows. My cat Kevin stopped sleeping on the bed because I thrashed so much. Sarah came back to work February 10th. Still had a faint scar through her left eyebrow and a slight droop when she was tired. But she walked in like nothing happened, handed out samosas, and asked who wanted to take the fresh liver transplant in room 8. Nobody talked about it. We just functioned. Until March 17th. I was charged that night when a man walked up to the double doors carrying the biggest fruit basket I'd ever seen. Wearing a reflective vest, same as always. Marcus. He looked different. Had lost 30 pounds, eyes clearer. He stood at the desk, hat literally in his hands, and asked the unit clerk in the smallest voice, "Is it okay if I leave this? I don't want to bother nobody. I just wanted to say thank you in person." The clerk paged me. I walked out expecting to feel fear. Instead, I felt this rush in my chest, like seeing an old friend you thought you'd lost. He started crying the second he saw me. "Miss Ashley, I ain't slept right since that day. I just need y'all to know I'm trying to be the man my mama raised again." I hugged him in the hallway like it was the most natural thing in the world. He asked if he could see Sarah. She happened to be on call that night. I paged her overhead. "Dr. Patel to SICU stat. You're going to want to take this one personally." She walked out of the call room still tying her white coat. When she saw Marcus, she froze for a half second, then opened her arms. He fell into them like a child and sobbed into her shoulder while she held him up. They stayed like that for a full minute in the middle of the unit hallway, while vents alarmed and phones rang and nobody moved to stop it. When they finally let go, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. Inside was a check for $8,400 made out to the Grady Foundation, ICU Staff Wellness Fund. Every penny he'd saved doing local routes instead of long haul since Christmas. "He can't fix what he broke," he said, "but maybe I can help pay for the therapy y'all needed because of me." Sarah tried to give it back. He wouldn't take it. Then he did the thing that finally made the entire night shift lose it in the break room. He got down on his knees again, right there in front of the nurses' station, in front of patients' families walking by, in front of God and everybody, and said loud enough for the whole unit to hear, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you when you were already hurting. Thank you for giving my mama the most love anybody ever showed her. Thank you for giving me grace when I didn't deserve it. I will never forget what you did for us." Then he stood up, wiped his face with the sleeve of his jacket, and walked out, without waiting for anyone to say it was okay. Sarah sat down hard on the stool behind the desk and cried into her hands. Jen closed the break room door, and we all stood there sobbing like someone died all over again. But it wasn't death this time. It was something being born. The fruit basket sat on the desk for 2 weeks. Every nurse took one piece home to their family and told the story. The check bought massage chairs for the break room and paid for 6 months of the employee assistance counseling sessions. Marcus started volunteering with the chaplaincy department on his days off, sitting with other families waiting for bad news. Sarah keeps Miss G's Bible on the top shelf in her office. She opens it when she has to give the worst news to another family. And me? I still have nightmares sometimes. But now when I wake up swinging at shadows, I remember a 260-pound man on his knees in a hospital hallway, kissing the hand of the doctor he injured. And I remember that redemption is real. It's ugly. It's slow. It hurts like hell. But it's real.
Part 7. Reflection, and what it did to all of us. A year is a strange amount of time in the ICU. It's long enough for residents to become attendings, for new grads to stop throwing up after their first code, for the night shift crew to get 2 new babies and 1 divorce. It's also short enough that some wounds still ache when the weather changes. By December 2025, most of the country had forgotten the viral TikTok. Someone's cousin filmed 30 seconds of the hallway aftermath on their phone, and it got 42 million views before Grady Legal made them take it down. The headlines moved on to the next tragedy. But inside our SICU, Christmas still smelled like blood and forgiveness. Sarah's scar is a thin white line through her left eyebrow now. She calls it her lightning bolt and jokes that it makes her look like a Harry Potter character. Kids in the peds ICU think it's cool. She never hides it. I still flinch sometimes when a family member raises their voice in the hallway. My therapist says that's normal. 63% of ICU nurses report symptoms of PTSD in the 2023-2024 AACN survey. I'm one of the statistics now. So are Jen, Mike the RT, and Sam the security officer. We meet for coffee once a month and talk about everything except that night, until someone brings it up, and then we all cry in the Waffle House parking lot like idiots. Healthcare violence isn't rare. You've seen the numbers. 1 in 4 nurses assaulted in the last year alone. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2024. 21 states still treat punching a nurse as simple misdemeanor assault, same as a bar fight. My own hospital had 8 documented assaults on staff in 2024 before November. What happened to Sarah should have been just another data point. Except it wasn't, because of what Marcus did next. He never stopped showing up. Every other Thursday, he volunteers with Rev Denise in the family waiting area, bringing homemade pound cake, and sitting with strangers while they wait for someone to come out and say the words that end worlds. He listens. He cries with them. He tells them, "I know what it feels like to lose the most important person in your life on Christmas morning, and I know what it feels like to hurt the people who tried to save her. If you need to scream, scream at me. I can take it." He started a little nonprofit called Miss G's Grace. It pays for therapy copays for healthcare workers who've been assaulted. Raised $47,000 in the first year, mostly $5 and $10 donations from nurses across the country who heard the story on Reddit or TikTok. Sarah is on the board. So am I. We speak together sometimes, at nursing conferences, at security trainings, at state legislatures when they debate stronger penalties for hospital violence. We tell the punch part fast. We linger on the kneeling part. Because that's the part people don't know how to file in their brains. Politicians want the story to be about metal detectors and panic buttons. Nurses want it to be about burnout and short staffing. Both are true. But the deeper truth is messier. Sometimes the person who hurts you is the same person who reminds you why you stay. Sometimes the fist and the kneeling come from the exact same heart. Sometimes love looks like violence for 5 seconds and repentance for the rest of a lifetime. I no longer believe we are heroes. That word is too clean. We are humans, holding other humans while they fall apart. Sometimes they lash out. Sometimes they kiss your scarred hand and thank you for catching them, even when you couldn't. Both things can be true at once. Sarah keeps a framed photo in her office now. It's from the hospital gala in September 2025. Marcus, in his first ever suit, standing next to Sarah in a red sari, both of them smiling like they didn't almost destroy each other on Christmas morning. Underneath, in Sarah's handwriting, forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a choice we keep making every single day. I read it when I have bad shifts, when families yell, when patients die, when I'm so tired I can't remember why I still do this. Then I remember Marcus on his knees, pressing his lips to the pulse in Sarah's wrist like he was checking to make sure Grace was still alive. And I clock in for another night. Because some stories don't end with the trauma. They end with the long, slow, painful, beautiful work of choosing to love anyway. That's the part no one puts in the headlines. But it's the only part that matters.
Part 8, Christmas 2024. December 25th, 2024, 07:12 a.m. SICU, Grady Memorial Hospital. The unit was already busy. Flu season came early and mean. We had 4 pressor-maxed patients, 2 fresh traumas, and 1 liver transplant who decided to bleed at 4 a.m. Same chaos, different year. I was charge again, running on 2 hours of sleep and the kind of coffee that tastes like regret, when the unit clerk buzzed me. "Ash, there's a guy at the desk with a big box. Says he's supposed to deliver it to the night shift personally." I figured it was another fruit basket from a grateful family and started walking out to sign for it. Then I saw him, Marcus, wearing a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, same reflective vest folded neatly over his arm like he'd just come off a run. He had put the weight back on in muscle, not fat, eyes bright, carrying the biggest cardboard box I'd ever seen, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with red ribbon. He smiled when he saw me, small, shy, the same smile he used to give through the glass when Miss G was still alive. "Miss Ashley," he said, voice thicker than I remembered. "Merry Christmas." I couldn't speak. Just opened my arms. He set the box down and hugged me so hard, my feet left the floor again. Sarah walked up behind me, fresh off rounding, hair still wet from the call room shower. When she saw him, she stopped dead, then started running, actually running, and threw herself into his arms like they were old war buddies. We stood there in the hallway, hugging and crying like lunatics, while monitors beeped and pumps alarmed, and nobody cared. Marcus finally pulled back, wiped his face with the heel of his hand, and pointed to the box. "I made something. Took me 11 months. Worked doubles, sold my trailer, learned how to use my daddy's old woodworking tools. I want y'all to have it." He knelt, of course he knelt, and started untying the ribbon with shaking hands. Inside was a wooden plaque, hand-carved, about 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. dark walnut, polished until it glowed. At the top, in perfect cursive relief, "In loving memory of Gloria Denise Jackson, Miss G, 1948-2024. She taught us how to read the world with kindness." Below that, carved deeper, the words we all still hear in our nightmares and our dreams. She wasn't alone. She was loved until the very last second. Thank you for giving my mama the best death anyone could ask for. And at the bottom, carved so deep it cast a shadow. Forgiveness is love after it has been crucified. By Marcus Jackson and the Grady SICU Night Shift, Christmas 2024. Under the words, he had carved every single name of every nurse, doctor, RT, tech, housekeeper, and security officer who touched Miss G's life during those 11 days. 47 names! Mine was right under Sarah's. The back of the plaque had a brass plate. Donated December 25th, 2024, by her son Marcus, who learned grace from the people who held his mother when he couldn't. He had mounted it on a heavy base so it could stand free. We all just stared. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Jen, tough as nails Jen, who once intubated a guy while he was punching her, dropped her clipboard and started sobbing. One by one, we folded. Grown men, seasoned nurses, the transporter who's seen everything. We sat on the floor in a circle around that plaque and cried like someone had opened a valve in our chests that had been sealed shut for a year. Marcus finally pulled back, wiped his face with the heel of his hand, and said the only thing he could manage. "I just wanted y'all to know she mattered, and y'all mattered to her, and you mattered to me, forever." Sarah stood up, walked to the nurse's station, and came back with the little gold Bible. She opened it to the flyleaf where Marcus had written the Christmas inscription to his mama, turned to a blank page at the back, and wrote in her neat doctor handwriting, "Christmas 2024. To the SICU Night Shift. You gave a son his mother for 11 more days, and you gave a violent man a second chance to be human. I am proud to serve with you. Love, Sarah Patel, MD." She handed the Bible to Marcus. He pressed it to his heart, then placed it gently at the base of the plaque like an offering. The plaque lives in our break room now, right above the coffee pot where no one can miss it. Every new nurse, every new resident, every traveler who comes through gets the same instruction on orientation. Read the plaque, then decide if you're strong enough to work here. Some people cry, some people nod and roll up their sleeves. Either reaction is acceptable, because this job will break your heart. It will put you on your knees, sometimes literally. But every once in a while, it will also let you witness a love so fierce that it punches through bone and then spends the rest of its life trying to heal what it broke. That's the real story of Christmas 2024. Not the blood, not the violence. The man on his knees, the doctor who forgave him, and the army of exhausted healthcare workers who decided that love was still worth the risk. Miss G didn't get to open her presents that year, but 1 year later, her son gave us the greatest gift we'd ever received. Proof that even on the worst night of your life, redemption is still possible. And some mothers keep teaching the world long after they're gone. Merry Christmas, Miss G. We still miss you, and we always will.